Hey everyone, this is the Charisma Quotient. I'm your host, Kim Seltzer, a dating and makeover expert, where I will help you build confidence, make connections, and find love from the outside in.
I'm going to tell you about two very different people that I recently spoke to on the phone for my free breakthrough calls. As you know, I often do these calls where I help people kind of sort out, what prevents them from finding love or just where they're getting stuck in their lives. And as I'm describing each of these callers, I want you to guess who ended up hiring me and finding success in their life. Okay, so the first person was that of a woman whose personal goal was to have a healthy relationship that turns into marriage. Now, she was successful in her career. She was really well off financially, had access to many resources, had a ton of friends. I mean, very active social life. Everybody loved her, lived in a gorgeous house, had an amazing figure, clothes to match. And actually, friends would tell her how together she is and how strong she is. And in fact, people often looked up to her. So, that's what she told me. So I asked her, well, okay, so I'm confused. You're painting a very picture perfect life. What is preventing you from finding love? And she proceeded to tell me that her biggest obstacle was having the confidence to speak up for herself in an authentic way and express her true feelings. And that she tended to pick men who were narcissistic in nature. And she admitted that she was constantly comparing herself to others. And although she seemed pretty quote unquote together to others, that she always would strive for perfection. And she never deep inside felt good enough or fulfilled. And she said that she was motivated to change, but she was also scared to death of failing. All right, so that was caller number one. Now, caller number two was a woman who had undergone tremendous adversity. She was a Native American who grew up in a community that ostracized her for her ethnicity. And as a child, she disclosed that she was physically and emotionally abused by family members and was not allowed to express her feelings. As she grew up, people and the kids in school made fun of her constantly. She was always teased for the way she looked. She did not have a great dating or relationship experience, where she would attract abusive men and often in toxic situations. But she did have one thing: her music and her dance. And that she really incorporated in her life. In fact, she used her creative outlet and turned it into a successful career as a music teacher, but still experiencing constant criticism even in the school system, and was blamed a lot. And she could see that she kept being put in this victim role somehow, but she didn't understand why it kept happening to her. She didn't make much money and she had very few resources. And she said she was motivated to change and was ready to look fear straight in the eye, as she did many times before. So that was caller number two. So after listening to each one, who do you think ended up hiring me, breaking through barriers, and having success in their life? Okay, if you said caller number one, you would be incorrect. It was caller number two. Why, do you ask? You see, although caller number one had the resources and her life seemingly together, her fear of failure and constant need for others' approval actually prevented her from moving forward. The need for approval and avoidance of rejection gets so deeply ingrained, and that stems from childhood. But tying your self-worth into what other people think can really set you up for disappointment, because you'll forego what matters most to you by doing things you believe will make other people happy rather than yourself. And when you let go of the need to please, you're free to be yourself. Otherwise, you're only trying to get people to like you by pretending to be someone else. So in reality, even if they approve of your actions, it's not the real you that they like. So this discontent is the result of being disconnected with your authentic self. And that attracts, guess what? Lopsided relationships like narcissists she kept encountering. And it also can prevent you, like her, from change because you are so focused on pleasing others rather than chancing a failure in your mind. Now, caller number two had been through way more adversity, right? Like you would think, how could she move forward? She had setbacks. She had a lack of resources. She lived in an environment that constantly ostracized her. So you would think that she would be a setup for failure in the end. But the truth is that she had some key elements it takes to succeed. She had the resilience, she had the drive, and she had the ability to look at fear in the face and get past it, as she was doing in her entire life. So she didn't take fear at face value. She learned to become curious and examine facts objectively and saw her failures, especially after she was coaching with me, as lessons that allowed her to get better by learning from mistakes. She, in fact, and this is the honest to God truth, she gave me 4 different credit cards to pay for her coaching in the beginning because she wanted it so bad. She did every single homework assignment I gave her. And by the end, she was promoted at work. She even made friends with some people she thought were her enemies there. She created a special music program in the school that won her a ton of accolades and started dating healthy men with confidence and ease. But most of all, and this is what she told me at the end, she really learned to love herself. So success would be something easy to achieve, right? I mean, if it weren't for success barriers, it would be easy. You would just see something, you'd go for it, and you'd get it. But the trouble is that in reality, there are constant walls in front of you, and that can prevent you from reaching what you want. And in order to reach it, you need to find a way to go over, around, under, or through these walls. Unfortunately, most of these walls can be surmounted and, in fact, can make you stronger and be the catalyst to your success. It's not always easy, but it's almost always possible. And I have somebody on the line today who lives and breathes this. Talk about making success possible after going through adversity. She's an incredible woman who is going to inspire all of you with her story to break those barriers to achieve anything you want in your life. She's a serial entrepreneur, international keynote speaker, best-selling author, and leading expert in helping people and organizations adapt to change. She is the CEO of Beyond Barriers, a global leadership platform that is on a mission to close the gender gap by helping women gain momentum with adaptive strategies, digital age skills, access to resources, and peer accountability cohorts. She is the founder of Beyond Curious, an award-winning digital innovation agency that partners with large companies to unlock innovation with agile processes, design thinking, and diverse cultures. In English, this all means she's like a badass, okay? She's won all these numerous awards, including America Entrepreneur Winning Women, recognized as LA Women of Influence by the Business Journals, and Women of Entrepreneurship by the LA Lakers and Comerica Bank. In other words, again, she is a true testament of how you can break barriers to really succeed. And her inspired story of turning barriers into breakthroughs have been featured in national media, including Fortune and Forbes. Her successes has been given her global platform of influence as a fierce advocate for diversity. She's a thought leader and expert. She's passionate about making the world more inclusive and innovative. And she graduated not with 1, not with 2, but 3 master's degrees and deeply curious lifelong learner. Welcome, Nikki Barua.
Thank you for having me, Kim. So great to be on your show.
Oh my God, it's so good having you. And, you know, I started out, talking about those 2 callers because, I think sometimes people think that you have to have a lot in order to get a lot, right? To succeed. And you other than this bio, that's this terrific bio that I just read is like so badass. I think it's your story that inspired me the most. And I know it's going to inspire others. I know some of it, but I don't know all of it. Can you share a little bit about that and like how it really helped you kind of come into this whole thing?
Absolutely. So the bio is the after part of the story. The before
Right.
part is really where the juice is, right? You mentioned I've got 3 master's degrees. What you forgot to mention is that I have a PhD in failure. So
I love
it's
it.
if I've mastered the art of failing and getting up again and again and again. And because
Mm.
I refuse to give up and keep breaking through all those barriers, that's the only reason I've been able to level up and keep achieving new levels of success. Uh,
Wow. Wow. Well, can you share a little bit of your journey and like how you kind of came into all the success?
Absolutely. So I want to start by sharing a very special story that, in so many ways, kind of sums up how I look at life and what has shaped me. So I grew up in India, and when I was a little girl, there weren't a whole lot of successful female role models in Indian
Hmm.
society at that time. It was a very different time. It was a closed economy. There was not a lot of exposure to Western media and all of that. And I was this young girl with big dreams. And my dad did something that was so special. He created this collage on the inside of my closet door, and with pictures of inspiring women, top leaders, and just great female role models. And in the center of that collage, he sketched out my face and wrote my name. But he didn't say a word about it to me. He didn't say, hey, I want you to grow up to be like these women, or I want you to have ambition and be successful. He just simply kept adding to those pictures. And in the center of all those amazing, inspiring women was my picture. So every day when I opened my closet door, I would look at this collage, and I felt like they were my friends. I felt like I belonged amongst them and that I could be just like them. And, so the more I kind of studied their stories and studied their lives, it was the common theme was that they all had uh, probably failed more than the average person. They all had struggled and faced bigger obstacles than the average person. But what made them unique, what they made them such shining examples, was that they never gave up and they kept raising their skill set, elevating their mindset to be bigger than the problems that they faced. And that was so influential in shaping my thinking, even as a young girl. And so, with that inspiration and with all of my big dreams, I believe that America was the place where those dreams would come true. So I set off with a one-way ticket to America in 1997, $250 in my pocket, and a suitcase full of really unfashionable clothes.
I wish I knew you back then. I would have totally
Oh,
helped you.
you would not want to know me back then if you saw what was in that suitcase. That was just horrifying. Now, I actually have a picture of the day I landed at the airport in Boston, and my picture from back then is a very humbling reminder of where I come from, and so I arrived here with really no resources and nothing except for my dreams, and I very quickly realized that I was very different from everybody else. Here I was, my first time leaving home, my home
Mhm.
country, and coming to this foreign land where people drive on the wrong side of the road. I did not know the difference between a nickel
Oh,
dime and a quarter. I'd never used a washing machine before. I didn't know how to cook. I mean, I was just completely clueless and lost.
wow.
And on top of that, here I was, this poor immigrant kid, who's non-white, who's female, and gay and short. I'm 4 feet 11, and I'm standing surrounded by giants that were so much taller than me. And like they looked different, they dressed different, they sounded different. And at
Mm.
first, I tried to be like everybody else. My first reaction was, I
Ah,
don't
yeah.
fit in. I need to be like everybody else. And comparison became my prison because I just compared myself to everybody else. And I felt like I need to look like them, sound like them, be like them, dress like them. And I just copied everyone around me. What I realized very quickly is that the more I became like everybody else, the less there was of me to see. And there
Mm.
was less of me that I could recognize and feel comfortable in my own skin. And frankly, the more I struggled, the more I was just, you know, fitting the norm, the less success I attracted. And it didn't take me very long to realize this is just painful. I'm uncomfortable in my skin. I'm frankly struggling to survive or succeed. And this is just not working. Well, I'm just going to go back to what I know and who I am. And that collage came back to mind as the inspiration of I'm meant to be stepping into my own greatness and standing in my own light. I'm not meant to be like everybody else. And that's when I, shed all of those layers of, falsehoods and the image that I'd created to simply choose to be who I am and be unapologetically authentic. And it was so quick from that point on that I became super successful at work. I was able to find my voice, find my own gift and talent, and play to my strengths, speak up with confidence because I believed in my own message. And at a very young age, very quickly scaled the top of big public corporations and became a very successful corporate executive in a major multi-billion dollar company. And I was barely 27 years old at the time. And, from that success, achieved a lot of career success. And just when everything is going great, you think, wow, I've made it. I've came as an immigrant, but I made my way. I've become successful. That's when the universe decides to teach you a lesson and remind you that you're not
Yeah.
invincible. And so, at the height of all of my successes in 2008, I lost everything I had. If you recall, the market had crashed at that time. And not only did I lose everything, but my partner committed suicide.
Oh.
And it was a really, really devastating time to kind of go through that experience and to lose someone I deeply loved, but also everything I had. And in one fell swoop, I went from doing well and being successful and finding my voice to losing it all over again. And it was almost like the first time I'd come to America, right? It was like I was
Mm-hmm.
resourceless all over again. And so this giant obstacle just appeared out of nowhere. And I have to be honest, in that moment, there's a part of you that wants to just give up, right? There's a part of you that says, gosh, not again. Like I've barely just come through all of these hardships. I barely just made it. Why me? And you want to just pity yourself and say, why me? And I just give up. I don't have the energy. And those are the moments when you're being challenged to step into, the best parts of yourself. And for me, every time I face that, that collage from my childhood has been the guiding light. And I always think about that and think about the obstacles that one must overcome because the obstacles are the path to the opportunity. And I'd find the courage, find the strength within myself, and have the faith to overcome the fear. And so I went through that very difficult experience in my life, found my way. I decided to launch my own business. I decided I wanted to do something more meaningful and not just, do the job that I had. So I quit my job, decided to start my own company, thinking, I have a great idea. Of course, it's going to be successful. And like any entrepreneur can attest, it's not always that simple, right? Just because you have a great idea doesn't mean customers come flocking
Right.
to you. I faced 300 rejections. 300 rejections.
300. Wait, I just want to highlight that. 300 rejections.
300 rejections
Uh-huh. Okay.
where it was like radio silence. I mean, here I was reaching out
Mm-hmm.
to all the people, by the way, that I had already done business with, that had known me as a successful person, that had known what I could offer to them. And yet it was radio silence. Like, it's like people just disappeared, when I said,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
and so after all of those rejections and radio silence, I finally got one small opportunity, and to basically like bid on something. And I thought, okay, here's my golden opportunity. Of course, I'm going to be successful. Well, didn't quite work out. I failed. I lost that deal. So I went back and asked for feedback, and tried to do a better job the next time. Well, I bid a second time. I failed again. I went back and asked for feedback. I bid again, failed a third time. Went back and asked for feedback, got slightly better, went and bid a fourth time, failed again. That happened 11 times, back to back to back. I had 11 massive failures back to back. And each time I failed, I went back and asked for feedback. And I asked how I could create even more value for my customers and how I could do an even better job. Because what I have learned is that failure is simply feedback. If you listen to what you need to learn in that moment, you can keep refining and getting better. And so obviously I was a slow learner. It took me 11 failures to figure this out. But on the 12th time, when I finally cracked the code, I built a multi-million-dollar global business that won numerous awards, was recognized as one of the top woman-owned businesses, became hugely successful. And, it throughout that journey, as much as I've been spotlighted for my successes and my story's been featured and all of that, the real superpower that I've learned that I have is being able to adapt to change quickly, because change is the only real constant that we have. So whether it was coming to America, and that was a huge change, or it was figuring out how to adapt to a new environment, figure out how to succeed in corporate America, or switch from having a job to becoming an entrepreneur, that was a change. Or how do you learn to become a better entrepreneur? And then I wrote a book, and learning how to become a best-selling author and serving my audience, even down to becoming a paid public speaker. Those are things that I'd never done before, but I believed in myself and my message and the value that it would create for my audience. And each time I would face that fear, and I would take the next steps, and I would deal with the obstacles and the barriers in my way, and I would keep putting one foot after the next and moving forward. And eventually success becomes inevitable. And that is
Wow.
really the greatest lessons that I've learned through every single thing I've ever done.
Wow. I just finished my popcorn, by the way. Normally I would interject and have more conversation. It's such a beautiful story. And I'm saying this and I mean this as a positive thing. As you're telling it, it was almost like watching a Disney movie of some sort, because there's this fantastical element to it where you're like transforming yourself, and I could literally see you transforming yourself over and over again, getting past these barriers as you were going through the story. And what's funny is that in the beginning of the story, you actually were more like caller number one, like you were shape-shifting into what other people you thought wanted to see. And it wasn't until you stepped into your authenticity and facing your fears that you started, kind of breaking through those barriers, like you said, one by one, and not giving up, and looking at failure as feedback. I mean, there were so many beautiful lessons along that yellow brick road as you took us down that I just, wanted to highlight. So, as I was listening to, I wondered, I mean, and the reason why the Disney movie metaphor kind of came to my mind is that I can hear a lot of people listening is like, well, that's great. Like, she somehow was able to she kept getting up from the boxing rink, and she just kept going. And a lot of people don't have that motivation, like so many people would have given up. What, besides that vision board, because you actually had to be motivated to even visualize that board for yourself, what internally drove you to keep getting up and moving forward?
Well, I wasn't always motivated, nor can I say that I'm still always motivated,
Okay.
because um, every time life has hit me sideways and you get punched in the face, it does, deflate you. It's
Yeah.
only human to feel like that. You can't, I certainly can pretend that I'm just so full of energy and positivity and nothing ever, even when things go wrong, I just have a big smile on my face and I'm jumping back into the ring and saying, bring it on. I absolutely get deflated. I
Hmm.
absolutely lose my confidence and, lose my motivation. But I don't let that emotion and that setback hold me back for too long. I almost have like this 90-second rule of anytime that happens, I give myself 90 seconds to feel like crap.
Oh,
And
I like this. Okay. So how do you do that? Like, do you cry? Do you wallow in it? Do
Well,
you set a timer?
whatever it is that I'm feeling, I don't well, one, I've learned not to run away from my feelings, because
Okay,
the
good.
more you try to avoid it, the more it persists. So, when I shared the setbacks I went through in 2008, I mean, that was massive. That was a completely devastating, losing everything in my life kind of situation. And I certainly did not have it in me to my way through it. So there was a long period of time where I was depressed, in fact, borderline suicidal. There were days when I did not want to live, I did not want to get out
Mm.
of bed, and it was extremely painful. But I did not look at it in absolute terms to say, gosh, I've been depressed for 6 months. Instead, I looked at it as, well, I feel pretty crappy right now. You kind
Mhm.
of reduce the amount of time, because when we magnify something and make it seem like, gosh, I've been unlucky my whole life, or I've been,
Yeah.
unemployed for 2 years, or I've been, single for 4 years, the more we magnify it, the more impossible it feels. And what I've learned is to make big problems smaller. So instead of feeling like, oh, I've been feeling depressed for 3 weeks in a row, I just make it like, well, I feel kind of sad right now. And okay, 90-second, 2 minutes, whatever I want to give myself. And then I'm just going to change my state. Now, it doesn't mean it's going to last. I might not l- figure out how to be in a better mood for more than an hour. I might go back to being unhappy. But each time
Mhm.
I kind of train myself to snap out of it in small little chunks, it just makes things a little bit easier, and it interrupts your pattern. Because oftentimes, even feeling bad for ourselves is a habit. It's what we have trained ourselves to feel. If we, and so what I have learned is interrupting my own pattern. So when I get stuck in a groove of a negative pattern, I just look at how can I interrupt that pattern and how can I create a pattern that's more positive. And so it's those little things that are triggers, that are physical
Mhm.
triggers of saying, okay, how do I snap out of that pattern? And then what are the things to be grateful for in this situation that will help me have an upward momentum? Because momentum is extremely powerful, but momentum can either go upwards or downwards. And you have to do something to make it go the direction you want it to do. Because if you don't do it, we'll naturally keep having downward momentum, and that's dangerous. So even through the
Yeah.
toughest times, I've figured out how to snap out of downward momentum and start going upwards, and figure out the things that have worked for me specifically are: number one, make a big problem smaller; number two, take one tiny step in a positive direction; and number three, you know, stay in the present. Don't dwell on everything in the past and everything in the future. If you stay in the present, then you're just looking at that tiny step and the tiny action you're taking right then.
I love that. And I just want to highlight what you're saying. And it's so synergistic with what I help my clients with too, is that it's all about balance. So many times I see people either wallowing in their sorrows and staying in the, feeling, but for too long, or they're running past it like the Energizer bunny and they're numbing out.
Yeah.
right? And so what I love what you're saying is it's actually doing both, and both are really important part of the healing process and helping people like motivate to change, because you have to honor where you're at. You have to like really identify your feelings in order to move past it, because either extreme doesn't work. It always backfires down the line. So that's such a beautiful process. And I mean, I love how you did like step by step, so just to review, I love the 90-second rule because it's something that everybody can do. I mean, I would even encourage people to set a timer, honestly, because also in your mind, sometimes time is different than the reality of it. It might feel longer or shorter, right? And so then going through those, sitting in it, identify it, make the bigger problems smaller, break the pattern, and then take action so that you have that momentum to move forward. That's awesome. I love that. Okay, so I have a big question for you, because obviously we talk a lot about dating here. How did you use some of these tools to attract a beautiful partner in your life?
Well, that's a great question. So, first off, I have to admit that for many years I did everything wrong in my personal life.
Oh, you mean this part wasn't perfect either?
Yeah. So even when I figured out how to achieve professional success and financial success, I kind
Mhm.
of figured that out faster. I went from trying to be like everyone else to like finding my authentic self and my own voice, my own message. And suddenly professionally, I became successful. Financially, things were amazing. And, I became influential and all of that. But much like the two phone call examples you gave, I was a lot like the first person,
Mm-hmm.
where everything was great professionally, but you look behind the scenes into my personal life, and especially my romantic life, it was an absolute disaster, which I will not start to share on air, but let's just suffice it to say that I could not have been a greater magnet for all the wrong people that were wrong for me. That
Right,
they
right.
might have been great, but they were wrong for me, and I just almost magically attracted all of them. What I discovered, and this was actually an amazing intervention by a friend of mine who one day said, that she had never met anyone with such a strong vision for their professional life that had zero vision for their personal life. And when she shared that, it occurred to me that is so true. I've never actually had a clear vision of the kind of person I want to share my life with, but even more importantly, the kind of person I need to be to attract that person and to be worthy of being with that person. That I too had work to do, but I didn't have a vision at all. So how could I achieve a goal that I'd not even defined? And so that intervention kind of led me to doing something really powerful. I, first of all, set about really sort of getting clear on my vision, which I'd never asked myself those questions. What kind of person do I want to be with? What are their qualities? What kind of life do I want? What does our shared experience look like? Who do I
Wait,
need?
did you make a vision board like you
I
did when you
did.
were a little girl? I'm
I,
seeing where this is going already. Like,
yeah,
did
I
you have
did it.
all the
I did.
cute people around you and who you
Yeah.
wanted to attract?
Well, it was more about the feelings and the experiences rather
Ah,
than the visual of what the person looked like. And then I wrote a letter, and I wrote a 6-page letter that described in vivid detail what my partner would be like. Every single
ooh.
thing, what what they're like, what they care about, what their values are, what they like to do for fun. I mean, I literally manifested this vision of this person. And then I also described what I'm like, what do they bring out in me, and what are we like together. And I wrote that letter, and actually after that I forgot all about it, and I kind of put it away in my journal and did not really dwell about it. But the mere act of visualizing with absolute clarity and certainty what I
Hmm.
wanted, and being able to put that down with intention, and know exactly what is right, and more importantly, know what is wrong for me, led to one very significant change. After that, I no longer invited anyone that did not fit that profile in my life. Like I refused to even, I mean, it just clarified my focus. And within 6 months, I had met, the person that fit that letter to a T. And
Mm.
we've been together for 3 years and got married a year and a half ago. And
Aw.
I have truly, I've found my soulmate, and she is everything I described in that. And I have become everything I described myself as needing to be worthy of that kind of relationship.
That's so awesome. And the thing too, what you were saying, I see a lot of times happen is that you'll focus on one area of your life. And in your case, it was your career. And you even said earlier in your story that you finally cracked the code where you became more confident in this area of your life. And so we usually get more focused on areas that we're confident in, and we neglect the areas that we're not so confident in. Or, and it usually takes like that aha moment that you experience from that person to gain some clarity and focus to do the same things that you did in other areas of your life to have success and bring it over to the other part, and sometimes like it's almost like a duh moment, like of course, like it worked over here, why can't, I should be doing that over in this part of my life. But we're not really fulfilled or complete until we have, if we've looked at all of these areas in our life, because what shows up in one area of our life often leaks into others. And I see this over and over and over again. So it's not until everything starts coming together where you really know that you've done the work, right, in getting there. And obviously your success is a true testament of how you can attract both love and money. So all of you listening out there, there's no excuse after listening to Nikki. So you really are an inspiration.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, I have to say that what I have learned is that the parts of my life where I experienced scarcity of any
Yeah.
kind were simply the result, first of all, of not even having clarity on what I really wanted. It's
Mhm.
oftentimes I meet people that will talk about how they want more money or want to get rich. And one of the first things I'll ask them, well, how much? Like if you want to get rich, well, how much do you want? What does rich mean to you? Because it means something different to everyone, right? So do you have an exact number in mind? And I can tell you 99% of the time, there is no answer to that question.
Mm.
And it's the
Mhm.
same for love. It's like, okay, I want love and I want a relationship. Well, what kind and like who? What does that uh,
What does
look
the
like?
partner look like? Right.
What
How
does
do they
that
act?
relationship look like? Or I want to be
Mhm.
successful. Well, what does success actually mean to you? Right.
Yeah.
So having absolute clarity in ways that are meaningful to you personally, as opposed to saying, oh, I want to be rich and I want a Lamborghini like my neighbor in Beverly Hills does, is meaningless, because that doesn't necessarily, it may not mean anything to you. So simply chasing something because someone else has it is not really authentic or relevant to yourself. We get what we truly desire in our own hearts. And so a great first step is getting clear on that.
I love that. And it's great parting words for this episode. Awesome. Nikki, can you share with everybody how people can find you? If there's anything that's going on in your world that you want to share with people?
Yes, I would invite your guests and your audience to connect with me on my website at nikkibarua.com. That's Nikki, B as in boy, ARUA.com. And if you go to nikkibarua.com/free, you can get a free copy of my book, Beyond Barriers, where I share not only the exact strategies that have repeatedly helped me overcome barriers and turn my obstacles into opportunities, but also share inspiring stories of incredible women that have achieved massive success in their life. So I'd love to share that
Mm.
gift with your audience and invite them to connect with me there.
I'd love to offer that. Yeah, definitely. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for just sharing your story, your heart, your wisdom, all of it, and coming on. It's been it really was such a beautiful story. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. And of course, y'all, it's been the Charisma Quotient. I'm your host, Kim Seltzer. Remember, you can build confidence, make connections, and find love from the outside in. And if you want to know more, make sure you go to my site, seltzerstyle.com. And if you want help to break through your barriers, whatever they may be, sign up for the free breakthrough call that I was talking about and follow the link in the show description so I can help you get there. Don't be like caller number 1 and stay in fear forever. And stay tuned until next week with more tips on how to feel and look fabulous every day.